everyone's going to confront their emotional things, whatever they carry with them, and whenever they do it, whenever they confront it. Whether you're, avoiding those things and you've slipped into alcohol as maybe you see it as a comfort or something that's helping you with that, or food. I was very overweight too. I had food issues. I've had pretty much all of them, except for really, really hard drugs. I've always been able to be productive and keep a job, never been fired from anything. So losing my other career that I spent 15 years in, that was a pretty hard blow. And especially after I had quit drinking. I had finally quit. I was like 3 months, 90 days sober. It was too late.
Welcome, everybody. This is Katie Lane with Thrive Alcohol Recovery, and I am back today again with another interview of someone who is a success story of the Sinclair Method. I have with me today Michael, and Michael's story is very unique, as is really everybody's story who does the method, but I'm really excited to jump into your story because it's complex. You were sounds like a more fast responder with TSM, but there was way more to the story than that. And you also mentioned it being an intense experience. So there's a lot that we're going to dive into that I think is going to be really interesting and helpful for people who are considering this method or using it. So just want to first start by thanking you, Michael, for taking time to chat with me today.
Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here because I did watch a lot of your interviews and stuff when I was going through my process. So this is pretty cool.
Well, this is your way to pay it forward. Now others who are, future TSMers are going to watch this interview. So I'm really excited to chat with you. Okay, I always like to start at the beginning so people can understand what your drinking was like before you started on Naltrexone. So can you start by just taking a couple minutes to share us a little bit about your history with alcohol and where you were at when you started the method?
I'm going to start at the end real quick that I'm at full extinction. That's where I am. And so to go back is I don't drink at all anymore. Where it started was really throughout my life, I've always drank, but I never had an issue with it. I could drink, do a bender, get off, whatever, not drink for 6 months, anything like that. So it was not really an issue. But then I've always struggled with some things. I just didn't know what they were, emotionally, mental health wise. And I ended up going through a divorce in 2017. And by 2018, I wasn't drinking at all, but I'd gone on vacation to Mexico to see a relative and ended up drinking a lot of tequila while I was down there for a week, because basically morning, afternoon, evening, you always have a shot of tequila before you do anything. So I didn't really think much about that. But then when I came back home, I just kind of continued doing that. And then I started to go out and do things and drink. And it very, very quickly, and I mean very quickly, within just like the first probably month of just that small pattern, I was already going into the pattern of swilling, downing stuff. And I was drinking bourbon. That was what I liked. So it'd go from having maybe a glass like that to it very quickly escalated to no glasses. I pick up a bottle and I drink, and I go about 1, 2, 3. That's about a shot. And so within just a very short period of time in 2018, I went from 2018 to 2020, and I was drinking every single day. I don't believe I was ever getting hungover, because I would wake up about 3 o'clock in the morning and I'd go and I would chug as much whiskey as I could. I mean, my math was like 3 shots. That's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Go lay back down, go to sleep, wake up to go to work, and I'm not hungover yet. I'm still drunk. And I lived like that for 2 years. And I was going through, what's the big bottle? I think people call it like a handle of bourbon. I go through 2 of those, or I go through 1 of those every 2 days. And then I would stop. I might leave, well, not might leave work. I'd leave work at lunch. In my area, there's a store called the Harps, and those foil packs of wine, they're like 3.5 glasses in the pack. They would have those on sale for like $5. And if you bought 4 of them, you got a better discount. So I might buy those at lunch. That way I could drink them on the way home real quick, have them all gone swilled, and then get into my whiskey. Everything was about that. So I woke up drunk. By about 1 o'clock, I was starting to feel really bad. And then by 4:30, I'm booking it out to the car to start drinking, get home, and do that cycle all over again.
Wow, that is very interesting. It reminds me a little bit of a testimony I have on here. Her name is Melanie, and she also developed this severe alcohol dependence in just a really short time. And typically, when someone gets to that level, they're drinking for years and years or decades. But you, it's just a matter of a few years, which is so crazy to me that it could just escalate that quickly. So just to clarify real quick, before 2017, 2018, you were not drinking, or you were drinking, but you didn't have a problem? What was that like?
I might drink, but I might have a glass of bourbon once every 6 months.
Wow.
I mean, we're not talking very much at all. But I was like a bourbon snob, though. I would get a nice bottle of Blanton's when you could get it, and you could still get it for like $55, $60 a bottle. I keep that. And so that was drinking this. And every once in a while, I might go out and with friends or something to something, not very often, maybe once or twice a year, and get drunk, just tie one on it or something. So that, but I never had an issue putting it away. Never had an issue with the alcohol sitting on the counters. No problem. Not an issue. So
Looking
does that
back,
make sense?
it makes perfect sense. So I'm curious, now that you've had some distance and obviously you went through TSM, you're at Extinction, so so much has changed since it all first started. But do you have insight into what it is that led you down the path of alcohol dependence so quickly, looking back?
I do. So I'd mentioned that in 2017, I was completing a divorce. And in that process, starting in 2015, I started going to counseling to try to improve everything and just make my life better in my marriage. And I discovered a lot of things about myself. And one of the things that I didn't really discover until after I started drinking is that, well, I was formally diagnosed with PTSD. I mean, I knew that I had issues. I know the incident that occurred when I was a very, very small child, but that was a very long time ago. And that just wasn't even a word that was used. So I did learn very quickly, and throughout this process of the treatment, I really, really discovered that I was compensating for that. And I also discovered that I really believe that you could take alcoholism or smoking or food addiction or pill addictions. It doesn't really matter. I think a lot of it operates on the same principles of TSM, Naltrexone. I think it can really be beneficial in a lot of different ways.
Absolutely, I agree. And there has been research into naltrexone for other behavioral addictions like gambling or food addictions or even cigarette. I've seen a study on marijuana. So yeah, I agree with that. So that's really interesting to me. And I would say for you as well, even though it wasn't, decade-long battle with alcohol, it was would you say you were in the category of severe alcohol use disorder?
Yes, absolutely. I was in that category, I say, because one of the physical health, what was going on with me, I was in very, very bad physical health at that point. And my drinking period was 2 years. Sometime around August 2018 is when I got back from Mexico, or September, something like that. And my extinction date was September 12th, 2020. So, I mean, yeah, we're talking like exactly 2 years almost. And so really strange. But I kind of lost track. What was the rest of your question? I lost
No,
track.
just
I'm sorry.
understanding if you felt like you were at severe alcohol use disorder, and sound like you had some
Oh,
symptoms that made you see that.
yes. Severe alcohol disorder because of what the physical symptoms were, but also I did lose my job because of it. I ended up losing my job within 3 months after I quit drinking, but it doesn't really matter because all the damage was done and it did come to a head. So my life, when I finally quit drinking, my life did a whole nother reset again. And I'm on that path still, but Yeah.
It's a lifelong journey. I feel like, I haven't drank in over 5 years, but there's still stuff that comes up where I'm like, oh, I need to address that or heal that, or clearly I wasn't acknowledging that because I was drinking so much. So yeah.
You don't acknowledge anything when you're drinking. I mean, just from the standpoint of you put a very powerful substance on your brain, you're not going to make the same decisions. You just aren't. And if you don't know, go watch people who are drinking, which is a very interesting aspect of what my life is like now, because I am constantly surrounded by alcohol, constantly, all the time. There's alcohol in my house right now. There's tons of it. And it does not bother me at all. And I don't recommend that for anyone necessarily, but it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, that's it. That's incredible. And you're right. When we drink alcohol, we're drinking to kind of numb and to maybe not face those tough life decisions and just to escape for a moment. And I think that's one of the harder aspects of changing our relationship with alcohol, even with naltrexone, is kind of learning to navigate life's challenges that are always going to be there. And by being someone who no longer numbs and has healthier coping tools. So absolutely. I wondered if you wanted to start talking about, kind of what led you to the Sinclair method. How is it that you found out about naltrexone and how did you get started on the treatment?
Great question. I'm really, really glad you asked that, because it's because of other people, brave people, I would say. And the reason I say that, one is therapists that I met and went to whenever I started divorce, and I spent several years with her. And it was her continued to say, hey, have you ever heard of this? I know it sounds crazy. And my opinion to her for a while was, that's the craziest thing I ever heard. I'm not going to do that. What a bullcrap excuse. No one's going to buy that. And that's a whole nother aspect of this that definitely is real. Everyone else is very likely going to go, you're going to take a pill and drink to quit drinking? You're an idiot. And I'm tired of you doing this to me. So good luck. It's gonna be tough. That part's gonna be a challenge. But it was my therapist that told me about it. And so whenever I finally got bad enough that I knew I needed to do something, which I tried to quit drinking for probably a good year, because this part of this was during COVID too, actually. I bought a house in January of 2020. I'm still here in this house now. But that part there that probably had something to do with it too, because I was in the house all the time and I could drink all day long. I didn't have to take a break anymore for work or anything. I could just do it all day long. But it was a therapist that helped me and was brave and stuck with it. And when I was ready and said, okay, I'm going to try something crazy because I'm this desperate now. I feel like my life is literally, I feel like I'm going to end up dying or something because I'm in bad shape. And then having a doctor that would prescribe naltrexone to me. Those two people right there. And I'm in an area of the country that kind of stuff isn't the most popular. That's looked at. I think a lot of people look at that as you're pretty weak if you got to do that. So those two people were pretty brave, and I think especially a medical doctor. Not to say my therapist wasn't brave; she is very brave. But my doctor, to listen to me and actually let me do it, prescribe me the medication, and let me show him I could do it. I think that was a big deal, because I don't know if a lot of doctors would do that. And when I was starting this journey, that was a continual obstacle. Doctors that will do it, where you can get it prescribed. That was a big deal. And I imagine it probably still is something that people have to work with on something that's new like this. Or I say new, but it's just not as well known.
Yeah, you're spot on with that. It's, some doctors, I just estimate roughly based on what I hear from people that it's like a 50-50 chance whether your doctor will prescribe. I went to 5 separate doctors when I first learned about it in 2017, and nobody would prescribe until I found a telemedicine doctor. But I hear from people all the time, oh, I'm going to go talk to my doctor, and they said no, or they won't let me drink on it, or just all these kinds of different answers people get. But Yeah, thankfully there are physicians out there like yours that are willing to prescribe and see how it goes. And then when they see people succeed like you did, then who knows how many patients they can help going forward in the future. So, okay, let's talk about then when you first started on the medication. What was your response like? Like, how did you give us like your scenario of your first drinking session or your couple drinking sessions when you first started on the medication? What was it like?
Okay, I'll try my best. And all the foggy memories, right? Um, I think basically I'm very good at following instructions. I will. You give me something to do, I'll do it to a T. And so the number one rule is you must take it the way it's said 1 hour before. And I was like, that's the rule. So I'm very, very good at that rule. And I was very, very good at drinking through the null. Is that I don't follow this stuff anymore. I don't, because I don't need to. But drinking through the null,
Very
that's still
common.
a thing.
Very
Okay.
common, especially with liquor, I've noticed. So yes, please
Okay.
continue.
Well, it's extra strong. I mean, it doesn't take much for you to get a big change off of that. Let's see, what was that? I lost my train of thought again.
Oh, just talking about your first drinking experience or first few on
Oh,
the
the first
Naltrexone.
drinking experience. It was that. I mean, I don't remember the exact day, but what I did was I took Naltrexone, I waited 1 hour and I drank through it. And I did that for almost the entire time. With little bits of, okay, don't drink and try, because the whole point is to block the receptors when I'm given its reward and the brain says I'm not fulfilled. But then don't take now and go do something else and give it dopamine and allow the brain to receive it, get the reward. Well, that is really tough for people to do. What I learned was as a hard part. And you've got to stop drinking. You do have to, in this program, at some point, you need to take a day off and don't drink and do something else. That is so crucial. If you don't, you're going to continue to drink through the night. Like you'll just keep doing it over and over again. And that's what I was doing, knowing I needed to do something, but not knowing what it looked like and how to do it. And what do you mean? Like, how's this going to make me like it just being totally terrified of everything because I'm an alcoholic and I can't fix myself. And I know my life's going to fall apart. I know it's going to. I can see the writing on the wall. You already know. It's just a matter of time. My relationship's going to fail. Am I going to die? I'm very close. And another thing to talk about. I'm sorry, but what alcohol does to you chemically in the brain and thoughts and feelings of wanting to harm yourself. That's something that I never understood before because I don't believe in it personally. I want to do that and I don't. But I do feel like I understand now whenever you can get to really low places and what's happening in your brain chemically. I think it's an important thing too.
Oh, absolutely. You hit on so many important points there, especially, if we're starting this method as drinking as heavily as you are as a daily drinker and just constantly in that kind of drinking and recovery state, man, it really messes. And I'm not a neuroscientist, but I know because I've kind of dove into this stuff out of curiosity, but it just messes with our brain chemicals to where the dopamine can get so low because we're kind of constantly oscillating up and down that you're right. It can cause people to lose their will to live or, have other destructive mental health issues. So yeah, really interesting.
It does.
Oh, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
It's not a reflection. I very strongly believe it's not a reflection of who you are, that you're weak. It is not. There are real chemical processes happening in your body and your brain that are making you more depressed, more hopeless. Like it is a real physiological thing. Yes, there is an emotional aspect to that. Yes. But alcohol, I'm sure other drugs do it too, but it does it in a specific way that it has you constantly chasing the high and it's giving you less and less. It's giving you more and more stress hormones all of the time. And it's just, you're getting further and further. The V is getting bigger and bigger away and you're still chasing it and you're actually getting further away, trying to chase it to get closer to what you think is going to help you, and you're getting further and further away. It's very dangerous.
I'm so glad you said that it doesn't have to do with who you are as a person, because I know for me, I got so identified with my craving and my drinking that I could not separate who I was, like where I started and ended and where my drinking started and ended. It was one. When I craved alcohol, Katie was craving alcohol and Katie was weak. But you're so right. It has to do with these changes that are happening in our brain. And I feel like what naltrexone does is it kind of starts to interrupt that and sever that relationship, so people can actually have more mental space and capacity to see, oh, that's a craving or that's an urge, and I don't have to respond to it. It's not as intense. I have, my own willpower, so to speak, or my own ability to make decisions, and it's not going to be totally white knuckled. Yes, I do see with TSM, it's not just about, I think almost everyone on this treatment will say it's not just about taking a pill. Yes, the pill is powerful, but we have to, like I often say, meet the medicine halfway with mindfulness, habit change, coping skills. You're going to therapy, you're making all these other lifestyle changes. So really grateful that you spoke to that, and also just really interested in your experience of drinking through naltrexone, because I hear that often from people, and usually they're very aware that that's what's happening. Like they say, I feel naltrexone working. I don't want a fourth or fifth drink, but I keep drinking anyway. And so I wondered with you, did you feel naltrexone working, giving you maybe an off switch and you were drinking through it? Or were you getting too intoxicated too quickly with the liquor and you couldn't really discern? I'm curious what that was like.
Yes. Yes to both. Yes to both. I, especially drinking hard alcohol, and there are some really strong rules. I'm pretty sure there were videos from you that I watched of strong recommendations of don't drink hard liquor, maybe drink beer, because of how quickly you can't have the same volume. You're gonna get so much more messed up on hard liquor than the other alternative. So yes, and it happens so fast. So you can realize that there's like, I'm going to drink through, and why? I don't know. That's the emotional aspect. And that's a whole nother thing about this. And I believe that's right there as part of when you've got to not drink and go do a positive activity. Maybe think of it this way. Your brain, you're not going to separate it out. It's a whole. But you want to take something out of it that's not good. The alcohol, at least from this point, when you're drinking, you're like, I gotta get rid of the alcohol. It's causing all my problems. But there's something in your brain that you're reaching out as alcohol to fix too. So you do have a physical addiction, but that didn't really take that long to kind of get over that hump pretty quickly to go, okay, and get a little clear almost. Now, not completely, but it's the emotional stuff. It's the relapse stuff, this emotional stuff. And that's why you've got to not take the null and not drink. Do an alternative, because if you take out the negative you want, you have a void. And now just think of it, okay? You've got to put something in there, or something else will go in there. Something will go into the void. And we're social people, and we don't like being alone. And you're drinking probably because there's some emotional things going on, and it's so easy to put something bad back into that void again. You have to put, and the cool thing is you get to choose. That's what's so cool. You will not feel motivated. You will feel depressed about it. You won't feel like it's possible or real, but it is a real thing. You get to choose. And I think it's like making a knife or anything like that. And the finished product is beautiful, and it's durable, and it's crafted. It's gorgeous, it's sharp, but it had to be completely melted down, beat the crap out of, taken out, melted back down, beat the crap out of again, and that over and over again to make it strong. Got to embrace the suck. That's a better term. Sorry, just popped
You
right
fired up over here, Michael. I'm like, yes, like I can tell you have done so much work on yourself. You've been in there, like the way you describe that, I'm just like, oh yes, you are nailing it spot on. Because as a coach, what I've observed, and I saw this in myself on TSM as well, is even when naltrexone's working, we can still drink out of habit because it's the default comfortable behavior that we do. And I totally agree that in order to get to the end goal with the method, whatever someone wants to have that control or they want to quit alcohol, they have to experience life alcohol free over and over and over again and strengthen their coping muscle. And like you said, you get to choose anything else in the world, that's enjoyable or that you like to do, and you have to apply yourself to it and give yourself a chance to learn these new things. And it's so uncomfortable and it's awkward and it's new. But if you don't do that, then nothing's going to change, even if you're religious about taking naltrexone. So anything
Yeah.
else you want to say
You'll
to
keep
that?
drinking through the gnaw. You'll just keep drinking through the gnaw, drinking through the gnaw. And I don't know at what point, that might help someone. I still have the the TSM app on my phone, where you could track all your drinking, right? You got the graph and everything. I got that. I went back and looked at it maybe last year, and I was like, it was such a short graph, And I remember other people's going, oh, I'm never going to be that. And some people go in years. I don't think that's right, wrong, good, bad, or indifferent. Everyone's going to confront their emotional things, whatever they carry with them, and whenever they do it, whenever they confront it. Whether you're, avoiding those things and you've slipped into alcohol as maybe you see it as a comfort or something that's helping you with that, or food. I was very overweight too. I had food issues. I've had pretty much all of them, except for really, really hard drugs. I've always been able to be productive and keep a job, never been fired from anything. So losing my other career that I spent 15 years in, that was a pretty hard blow. That was a pretty hard blow. And especially after I had quit drinking. I had finally quit. I was like 3 months, 90 days sober. It was too late.
Wow, 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 wow. Yeah, and I love how you describe it earlier too. It's like that process of refinement, or just kind of stepping into more of who you are, like the truth of who you are. That all gets masked and weakened with alcohol. Like, we just become, someone on our group call the other night said, alcohol makes me a shell of myself. It's not really who I am. And like, part of this process is rediscovering who we are. And when we go through that refinement process and that growth process, and we come out the other side, we're a completely different person. And we've built this foundation within ourselves that really can't be taken away. Like, that ability to rely on yourself and trust yourself and know that, hey, life can throw anything at me, and I know I'm not going to reach for a drink to escape it. Like, that is the best feeling in the world, to be just completely recovered and over this. But I remember, for me, my mantra on the Sinclair Method was, the only way out is through. Like, there's no shortcut for me. Okay, maybe naltrexone is a shortcut in a way. I've heard people say that. Like, yeah, I'm grateful I took it. But there was also this other healing process where, if I wanted to be someone who didn't reach for a bottle of wine after a rough day, then I had to learn how to be someone who didn't reach for a bottle of wine after a hard day. And that didn't mean I wasn't having a glass of wine on Friday with my pasta or something, but it was this whole paradigm shift. And I think when people kind of get to that mountain, what I often see as a pattern with people I work with is, they start naltrexone, they feel it working, they're excited, they're super, encouraged, but then they realize there's this like whole mountain they have to overcome of like coping and habit and things. And they're like, oh, okay. Like, and nothing wrong
It's a
with
big
that.
one.
Yeah, it is.
Well, it's funny how big the mountain is, because when you're on the other side of it, or when you get through it, when you finally, you're like, it was a hill. It wasn't even a mountain, you know. It's perspective, and one person's mountain may be someone else's foothill, vice versa. You don't know. You never really know. It's why it is so important to be kind and loving to others. It's so hard to do, because life is hard. And especially if you're struggling with something like this, life is hard for you. I know it is. And it's more than hard. It's very hopeless. You're very depressed. And by the way, the more alcohol you put on it, the more depressed you're going to get, because you're going to have more of those chemicals in your body. And you can take all the medication you want, and you're still going to get more depressed, because you're making yourself more depressed with these chemicals you're putting in your body. And then your body processes them, and it creates these other byproducts, and it just does all kinds of stuff to you. Because the whole point of the human body is it's self-contained. It wants to maintain homeostasis. And it has everything it needs. We're talking about opioids, right? We're talking about, I just lost my train of thought on that word. I lose my train of thought all the time, but we're talking about dopamine. It's incredibly powerful. Your brain creates it. Like, you don't have to go out and try to find it to shoot it. Your brain gives it to you. I don't know. We make goofy decisions.
Yeah, our brain, it loves things that give it pleasure. And when we find something like alcohol that or food, like you talked about, when it's rewarding, it's, easy to develop a tendency toward that. And I feel like once we cross that line, kind of like you did very quickly into alcohol use disorder, it's really hard to crawl ourselves out of that. We kind of get in this pit that the more we try to crawl out, the deeper we go. And until, for
Mhm.
me at least, naltrexone and TSM. So, okay, I want to go back to what you were saying earlier, because you said you were on naltrexone and you were drinking through the medication
Okay.
consistently for a long period of time. So, what changed for you? Because I know you shared earlier that you kind of were a fast responder to the naltrexone, even though you came into it with severe alcohol use disorder and a lot of things to kind of heal and overcome. So talk to me about, what changed for you? How did you overcome this? Yeah, how did you overcome it?
What changed for me that helped me be able to stop, quit, get through it successfully? Um,
Yeah.
well, so part of my PTSD is I struggle severely with codependence. It may sound like it's way off, but it's not, because it has a lot to do with relationship, and it has to do with pressure at the time. So part of the stuff was how much pressure was on me in my relationship and how bad I was making things and how badly I wanted to fix that aspect, not knowing how. So that was a huge motivator always on me in a way, but it also was a demotivator because I didn't think I could ever do it. And then, the other thing about it was, sorry, I just kind of get my thoughts together on this. I'd already been drinking for a while. So when I started TSM, it was right at the very tail end. So there was so much pressure going on, not just with my aspect of how I viewed the relationship, also what was happening in the relationship. It was at ultimatums and stuff like that. Like there had to be results at this point. With a partner that does drink alcohol, but not the way I was doing it. Someone who has control over it, really, I guess you could say that. So it was just a big deal, and there's a lot of pressure there. And then also my health, and I knew my employment. I wasn't present ever for anything. So, I mean, I knew these things, and there was tremendous amounts of pressure. So I was really, and I'm the kind of person I am, when I do something, I do it, or I'm not going to do it at all. There's no middle ground. Sorry, but I'm not real good with gray area. And I'm really great. You want to get something done, I'm your guy. I'm going to destroy everything in my wake. I'm going to accomplish that goal. So it's totally counterproductive. But I'm a veteran too, so I learned it. But there was all that pressure going on. So I was really pushing myself to try to, in counseling and knowledge and understand what was going on and all this pressure to do it. But I was struggling so hard because I was never not drinking because I was afraid not to, and the habit and just everything that goes on with it. I had to drink. I had to. And I was physically and chemically dependent on it at that point. I was in this bad cycle of just trying to, I can't say feel good, but after you're drunk and you start to come down and be, you're not quite hungover yet, but you carry such a high level of toxicity in your body, you don't feel good. That for me, in that 3-month period, is about 90 days that it took for me to do this. I finally ended up going on is like a 4 or 5 day bender, somewhere in that amount of time. And what I mean by that is I never left the house, but I also really only had a few moments of lucidity where I wake up and I went straight to drink more alcohol. And during those times, I mean, I would drink anything and everything, that not rubbing alcohol, but I mean, you might look and go, you can't, this is disgusting. Like, this is the nastiest crap, I'm drinking it. Um, so it was about 4 or 5 days. And at that time, my fiance, she actually left. She didn't leave, but she was just not here. She was living her life. And I knew that in these little moments of like text here and there. And I don't know, that was such a blur in that 4 or 5 days But what ended up happening is I woke up. No, it was about, well, September 12th. It's probably about midnight or so. And I did wake up to a text, and it was my fiance telling me that one of our friends that had been really sick had had a stroke. And I knew that they probably were going to die. They died. And I was not there. She was not here. She was somewhere else. And I don't know exactly what it was in that last point of that last catalyst. But when I finally woke up that morning on the 12th, I never took another drink again. I never took another Nal pill again either. I didn't do any more TSM, but I did everything I learned from TSM. And I did something else called the 30-day alcohol experiment. You may have heard of it. I think I may even learned it from you guys. I did that. That's what I did. I had pushed, I'd used the now, I drank through the now. There's an experience we hadn't got to yet. That's important. I shared with you earlier, right? But I did all the stuff, and I followed the rules, and I watched the videos, and I watched the documentary, and I was just doing it and going the whole time. This is not working for me. This is not working for me. This is never going to work for me. When is this going to work for me? You know, I mean, every question anyone out there is thinking right now, of course I had that question too. And okay, I know you did too. But when I woke up that morning, I just decided that I was not going to drink, not forever or anything. I just wasn't going to drink, which is the decision everyone has to make at least one time. And that is, you took your now yesterday, you went an hour, you drank, don't take it today and go for a walk. I had to make the same, that's that decision. I don't know if that makes sense, but the decision I made was I'm not going to drink. It's that decision. The now and all the work I did helped me get prepared. And then when I actually had the courage, it took someone special dying. It took for me to be completely unavailable for the person that's most important in my life, to break me down to the point where I said, oh my God, I'm changing today. That's the point though, is don't take your pill, don't drink, go for a walk. Something, I don't care what it is. A walk is just an example of you want to do something that you've always loved, even if you haven't enjoyed it for years. But you, man, I used to love it. And whenever I think about it, I wish I could go back in time and do it again. Go freaking do that. As long as it's not drinking. Go do that for 5 or 10. I don't care how long it is. Just allow your brain to have a dopamine hit from a good thing. Just let it have it. It's supposed to anyway. We've just been blocking it with a substance we've been putting in our body. We've been stopping what we're supposed to be doing, what our body's made to keep us alive and do it right. But because you got to be careful, man. We're like apes, chimpanzees, and the human brain is a protective organ. It wants to keep you alive, but it's so good at it, it'll kill itself with poison, because you'll take it and you go get euphoria and go, that was good. And the brain goes, that was great. Do that again. Here's some dopamine. Go get it. But that's bad, because eventually it's like the chimpanzees, the cocaine experiment. They just keep hitting the button until that's bad.
Wow. Like, your story is so powerful and there's so much depth to it. And I think so much that many people can relate to. And even though, like, honestly, like, people reaching the extinction point in 3 months, it happens, but you're one of the more rare cases. But I think what's so interesting with your story is that a lot of people think, oh, they must have not had alcohol addiction then if they reached it that quickly, or they must have not been drinking that much or something. But with you, man, were you at a place of very heavy drinking, severe alcohol use disorder, and even up until the tail end of your extinction point, you said you were on a bender. So it's not like you had that typical nice little reduction over months and months and all of that. It was like a severing. And so I wonder if, like, because I think something that happens.
Severing.
Okay.
Severing.
I think what happens, and I want to ask you about this, because I think what happens for some people is when they're compliant with naltrexone and they're taking it correctly, I think it's working more to kind of undo those pathways in the brain maybe than people realize, and the habit and the coping is kind of overpowering it. And so to your point, like you weren't really giving yourself a chance to like experience life without alcohol and see like, do I even crave alcohol today? What's it like? It was like you were in that habit of drinking as you were, but you were doing it with naltrexone. So it sounds like, and I've heard this from others as well, when they finally get that distance from alcohol, whether it's one alcohol-free day or a week or a 30-day challenge, they realize, oh, like naltrexone was working better than I thought it was. Like actually my urge to drink isn't as intense, and being alcohol-free is easier than I thought it was going to be. And so for you, you know, you had that really tragic moment happen in your life, which is just like, I can't imagine the grief and the guilt and just everything you felt having gone through that. But that was the catalyst that motivated you, it sounds like, to do the alcohol experiment, which is an Annie Grace like 30-day challenge, if I'm not mistaken. So tell us
Yes.
about that. Like what happened like that day after, you know, you decided, okay, I'm not going to drink for now, at least. Tell us about that.
You know, the only thing I can remember about waking up that morning and making that decision is that morning and making that decision. But I remember it very vividly. I remember that night before, the parts where I would get up from the bed, stumbling to where the liquor cabinet is, stumble back, and you know, just back and forth for 4 or 5 days. And that wasn't the first time I'd done that. People do. I did benders like that before. That was probably one of the worst ones. But it was that morning, and I had a conversation with my friend that passed. I just did. I chose, you know, wow. It just, that part really hit me. And the person that I let down, I love that person. Why would I do to them when I was not present? And I've done a lot of therapy and counseling. I'm a big fan of Brene Brown. And so, you know, the vulnerability and stuff really hit home with me. So that was a huge thing. Now, when it came to, you know, the rest of that day, I remember, and I don't remember exactly how I found Annie Grace, but I'd found it before I quit, and I just did it. Now, what I feel like was so powerful about that was the now did something for me. I had an experience that I believe primed me very, very well. But the other part was that I'm a very factual person. I like details. If I need to understand something for me to make it part of what I am, I don't just look at something and go, okay, I won't do it. It's got to mean something to me. And then I'll incorporate it and it'll be part of who I am. So if it's not valuable or good or productive, I don't want it, which is crazy to think you're an alcoholic because you hurt everyone. But either way, that's why I know it's just reflective of who you are. You're a good person. You're not a bad person because you have an alcohol issue. But the Annie Grace is all about the facts and the science. It was so cool for me because it was like having permission to unzip this person that's an alcoholic and believes all this and say, okay, and sit over here for a second and look at him. Just look at him, observe him without any emotions. And then go, that's, what the heck is wrong with that person? Like, none of this makes any sense. It's nothing logical. And I think right now people are going, I can't think logically. I believe very strongly the now is going to help with that. I believe that's very preparatory. But if you don't ever give yourself a chance with clear days to experience that and then employ that and learn that, have the experiences going through, I unzipped this person or whatever, I looked at them, and guess what? I got right back in and zipped it back up. I'm still me. I didn't change nothing. I didn't become someone different, but I gained so much knowledge. And that's like the perspective shifts. And I felt the power of the alcohol just, you know, it became irrelevant is how I could kind of describe it. And whenever I understood myself and the alcohol, I didn't want it. I didn't want it anymore. I just didn't want it anymore. So I did the alcohol experience, the 30-day alcohol experiment. I did 90 days of TSM, and I did it. And I didn't think it was working at all. It would never work for me. My chart first started, it was awesome, like it always does. Oh, it dropped down. And it goes, right? Everybody, it's the honeymoon phase. Oh, I'm getting better. Bam. It's never going to get better. But it was working. And I don't know if anyone out there seen The Karate Kid. Wax on, wax off, sand the floor, paint the fence, paint the house, right? I'm not learning nothing from you, old man. I'm leaving. I'm out of here. No, stop, come back. And you go, and then you walk through it, you go, holy crap. I just discovered everything I wouldn't even seen in front of my face. There it was majorly powerful. And it still is to this day, right now, every day of my life. That is still every bit as powerful. I have goosebumps in the back of my neck right now because that won't leave you. That is powerful right now still.
I have goosebumps as well. And I just agree because it's something we talk a lot about in our program that I have observed in a lot of clients. And we kind of describe it as, I think really similar to what you're saying is, simply put, challenging the pre-existing beliefs we have with alcohol and how we relate to alcohol. For example, I had a client one time who was on naltrexone religiously, saw a little change, but was really plateaued and really frustrated and about to throw in the towel. And on our call, they said, well, I love my bottle of wine every night. Like, it's my comfort blanket. I turn to it. Like, who would I be without this? And for me, that was just like the aha moment where naltrexone is going to help you so far. But if you're operating from a place where you're very attached to this bottle of wine every day, and you're not willing to even explore the idea of maybe a half a bottle of wine or one day without wine, then you're just going to stay stuck. And that's a fact. And I think some people hit that plateau for a while on TSM and then they overcome it. So not to say that if that's you, you need to fix it tomorrow, but just to, I think, become aware of these beliefs that we have operating sometimes unconsciously under the surface that are driving our day-to-day behaviors. And like you experience is like when you just get a different perspective on things, man, that can shatter a whole a paradigm you've been believing for years or decades. And you can all of a sudden think about it differently. I remember that happened for me a few months into the method where I really believed, and I wasn't aware, but I believed that I needed alcohol to cope. Like that was the only thing that was going to help me get through life's difficulties, because it did for 10 years. But I realized, like, oh my goodness, if I really want to be someone who has control over alcohol, like I look at my husband, he has total control over alcohol and he never drinks when he's upset. It's just like a basic rule he's always followed, not because he forces it. He's like, it's just not a good idea. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. But yeah.
Wow, what an amazing person. He has such control over himself.
I know.
I'm in awe.
Right. But I'm like, okay, so I've got to be someone who doesn't drink when I'm upset. And that was so scary. It was honestly devastating to realize that. But it was me opening up a door to a new relationship with alcohol that was not me relying on it as this very unhealthy and destructive coping tool. So I think that's a lot of the stuff that perhaps people don't pay attention to or aren't aware of, and they take naltrexone and they're fighting the treatment. They're like, it's not working, it's not working. It's like, but what's going on under the surface in your beliefs and the way you're operating, how you're viewing alcohol, that may be contributing to the behaviors that are playing out. And what I love about TSM is for most of us, it can be done really gradually. And I think your experience is unique because it was like an instantaneous moment where everything changed. But I think for a lot of other people, it can be a process of just like questioning these beliefs and deciding to have new beliefs and allowing yourself some space from the alcohol, even just starting with one day or a few hours or something, just to kind of start exploring this new reality and new relationship with it. So yeah, anything else you want to say on that?
Well, something about me, and I do want people to really keep this in mind, is that my personality and the circumstances that I was in, if you take those into consideration, I think it does make sense that I end up getting through it quickly. Now, by contrast, if we took, say, my fiance, not fast, would probably still be doing it right now after, years. Not the way it works, but I'm like a meteor. I burn hot and fast. That's just how I operate. And when I do something, I do nothing halfway. If I'm going to do it, I'll go all into it, but I have to get to that point. So for me, that's when you know me and take into consideration kind of the things that were going on in my life that time and all the pressure cooker, it doesn't surprise me at all. But when I was in it, I believed exactly it would never get better. it's going to take forever. And believing all the other negative things. And then also the aspects of you're trying to hide it. You think you can hide your alcoholism. But anyone out there that's spent a little bit of time getting in touch with themselves a little bit, and they're relatively well balanced, I guess, or halfway, they can see it all over you. You can see it all over you. Okay. You're not hiding anything from anyone. And they can smell you anyway. So good luck with that part. So yeah, it's just, we tell ourselves all kinds of delusional things.
Yeah.
But for me, though, I can understand why it would take some people, why it could take longer. I don't think that's bad. Don't feel bad about it at all. You do what you do because that's just who you are and how you need to process things and what works for you. If you feel like you need to push that a little bit because you think maybe that's a deficiency in your life, then go work on that. That's separate from your alcoholism or whatever you want to call it, alcohol use disorder, but they're the same principle. That's what's so cool. You can like kill two birds with one stone in so many ways, treating alcoholism with this method. There's so many things you can do. And my life is not perfect. For anyone out there watching, it's not perfect. I struggle with things. I still have a lot of insecurities and doubts. I struggle with PTSD and anxiety. I do. My life is not perfect. It's like everyone else's, and it just is. But in this area we're talking about, I was successful. I still am. And I'm a big proponent of this. I will do everything I can to try to help other people by at least sharing what I have to give. And we've got another thing to talk about if you decide you want to ask me, I guess.
No, I want to, yeah, that was my next question, because I know we're like, I feel like we could talk for hours. But, I wanted to ask you, because before we hit record, you were sharing a really unique experience you had that I might just simplify and call like you had a really mindful moment of discerning, an alcohol craving and whether or not you were going to respond to it. And, just to kind of set it up, that's how I want to simply describe it. So please tell us about that experience you had.
That's a really good way to put it. You said response to a craving. And the alcohol experiment helped with this too, to understand what's actually happening inside all of our brains. And specifically whenever you drink, and then also after you stop drinking, what's happening in your brain, because there are more things happening. You're going to go through different chemical and hormonal changes and balances. And I don't mean this to be a scary thing, but it takes about a year for your body to reach homeostasis again. So you are going to go through different things. You might have night, I don't know, all kinds of stuff. But you'll be okay. You'll be fine. But basically, I think what happened was, for me, I took the Nal, and I wasn't giving myself any breaks. Like, don't take the Nal, go walk, don't drink. I wasn't doing that. I was drinking through, with the exception of maybe a couple here and there. Just really, really trying to push myself every here and blue moon, whatever. But one night is probably, I would say it was roughly somewhere between 2 to 3 weeks before extinction. And it was a typical type of thing. I'm pretty sure I'd probably taken a Nal and I had drank. And I woke up somewhere at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning, which that time frame, that's all about the chemicals and the hormones that alcohol's pumping in your body. And you're going to wake up. It's funny. Like, you may not think you have nothing in common, but all alcoholics are going to wake up right around in that time frame because of what's happening inside your body chemically. So I wake up, and instead of getting up and walking straight to the liquor cabinet, which is what I would do every single morning, go straight to the liquor cabinet, open up the big handle of bourbon, good old Bullet bourbon, and go 1, 2, 3. That's one. 1, 2, 3. Then 1, 2, 3. And by that, then I'd start to feel it go over my eyes and my head. And I'm like, time to go back to bed. But I didn't do it that morning. When I woke up, laid on my side. I'm going to act it out for you guys, laid in bed. And I wake up, I'm like this pretty much. And I have this sensation all over my body. It was like I was just radiating, humming in a way. It's really weird. And I knew I wanted to go up and get alcohol, like I always do. But all of a sudden, for whatever reason, it's really strange. I didn't. I said no. But the buzzing, the humming, and that kind of like an energy sensation, that started back here in the back of my head. So as I'm laying like this in the bed, I feel this intenseness coming up over me. And it's kind of radiating over towards the top of my head. And it kind of stops about right here. Doesn't come up here, right here. And I can feel and I can hear. What it feels like is I hear that part of my brain saying, go give me alcohol right now. And it's mad, it's angry. I mean, if you can imagine, you can hear it. Just imagine watching a really scary movie and the demon pops out, or whatever. And it's, you're like, oh my God. It was like that. So I was like, oh my gosh, for a couple of reasons. One, I'm like, who's this? I can actually because now I feel like I'm feeling this, but I feel like who I am is actually up here. That's where I felt I was right here. So I'm laying in bed, feeling this, having this huge response and it's feeling, and I feel like I'm being screamed at. Go feed me, give me what I want. And I know what it wants. I know exactly what's happening. I know exactly. And this part of my brain turned around and said, nope, not going to do it. And that was it. And I just laid there. And usually I would start shaking. I'm going to be nervous. I'm going to get up to react. I can't sit still. I mean, all the things anyone's going to go through, I'm going to respond like that. I'm not going to think about it. But I didn't. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I didn't get scared. And all of a sudden, it was incredibly empowering. And as I sat there more, I got more assertive with it because it kept yelling at me, feed me, give me what I need. You do this. I want it. You know what to do. Go do it. We have an arrangement. Why is it different? It's mad. But as I stand there, and I don't get mad at it, I don't yell at it. I just stand there. I'm like, you can't faze me. You have zero control over me right now. And it just disappeared. This stayed, that dissipated, no craving. I laid in bed and I did not drink. I do not remember what happened after that. That was almost right at the very end. I know I drank more after that. I know I did. I took the Nal after that. I did not, after having that experience, which I've never had an experience like that, never even since have I had an experience like that. But it was really interesting because it was really like I got to confront this drive that's been driving me to do this, whatever it is, whatever I've created in myself. And I was able to sit out in a different perspective and look at it. And I said no to it. I did not respond. And I felt empowered by it. But then get up the next day and life does what life does. And you go, well, I couldn't possibly not drink again today. I mean, no way. And you continue the cycle. Don't feel bad, everybody, if you do that. Okay. It happens. It's just happens. That's a weird experience. Please, nobody make fun of me, and they'll tell everybody out there I'm a weirdo. But it happened to me. I know it was insanely powerful, and it's still relevant in my life today. I still use that experience in my life today for me. I share it with people sometimes for those I know or want help, need help, and will receive the message. I'll share these things with them. But that was a powerful experience. And then when I started the 30-day alcohol experiment, that experience and the Nal and the TSM program was perfect preparation for that. Those two things, I did y'all get together and do it together? Because I'm telling you, it's science and science, and it's going to help you be able to take all this emotional stuff that we also have in our alcoholism. It's going to help you start to slowly peel a layer of that off here and there. And not that it's going to disappear and go away, but you're going to be able to peel it off and set it here for a minute. But you know what? I got this. It's a part of who I am. Whatever, but I can sit over here for a minute. It's going to be just fine, like any other thing you put on the shelf. It doesn't even go anywhere, and eventually it gets dust, and you finally decide to get rid of it, right? And whenever you decide, I can let it go, I don't need it anymore. So there's really no difference. So you always have the power. The power is always in you whenever you get to the point where you can make those decisions for you.
Yes. And I don't think it's weird at all what you're saying. And in fact, I would imagine that most, if not all people listening can relate to that, at least on some level, because I think any one of us who struggles with alcohol will know that there's this part of our brain that wakes up and is hungover and says, oh, why do I keep doing this? I need to stop drinking. There's that logical kind of version of it's the real self. Like our real self wants to get this issue under control. But then when the brain is hijacked by the alcohol, that part of you that you explained was kind of like telling you go get the alcohol, that often overrides our logic and reason. I know for me, I tried to quit drinking dozens of times over a 10-year period, and I would be so resolved, and this is the time I'm not going to drink anymore. But then that alcohol part of my brain, I know people call it the lizard brain, would just overpower and kind of win out. But what you described, I think with naltrexone, it made that logical part of my brain, that real brain, it made that voice louder and the alcohol voice much smaller, to where doing things like what you did, it's almost like this, I mean, it's like a mindfulness exercise or something like that, where I remember clearly on my TSM journey where I'd have this urge to drink and I would let it like stay there and I wouldn't react to it. And I'd be like, is that a real urge? Is it just because I'm upset or because it's a habit? And I would just like observe it. And I would say, I can drink in an hour if I want to. I'll take naltrexone, but let me just observe what's going on here. And I think that kind of practice and what you described, we're not saying, okay, you have to do that every time and never drink again. It's just about giving yourself that chance to even watch the craving and not just immediately respond to it. Because like you said, it would almost be like an automatic thing where it's like, oh, that urge, I'm going straight to the liquor cabinet. But you did something different there that was, I mean, life-changing and pivotal for your TSM and ultimately alcohol-free journey. So I appreciate you sharing that. I don't find it weird at all.
Well, and you know what? This TSM and the 30-day alcohol experiment, they're not white knuckling. They're not. That's so beautiful because I don't know how to put it, but it's like, it's not a fair playing field. It's really not. Because if you're white knuckling, you're on its playing field. You don't have the perspective. You took yourself out of the reality of life and you said, I'm going to jump right into this little thing because my perspective is so far in here. I think this is what life is. It's not white knuckling. That's not really, there's a better way. There's a way better way. And this is it. I'm a big proponent of the alcohol experiment because they go together. And when you do it, it goes together. Well, you said something about the response in the brains, midbrain, frontal lobe, right? The midbrain is the emotional center, and this is going to be paraphrased. I'm not a professional, but same thing with PTSD. And the reason your alcohol brain comes in is because your frontal lobe goes offline and you go back to the midbrain. This is also where emotions are stored, memories, things like that. So you pair things. And it's the same type of thing. So no, you are not present because you are no longer functioning here when you get triggered about something. You get triggered by alcohol. And that's the thing about it. It's really the alcohol or PTSD or whatever it is. They're the same principles and the same parts of the brain. And I believe I think it's a huge benefit. And as time goes on, there's more research. I think we're going to see naltrexone employed in many, many other ways for a wide variety of things, because it's not that you got a food problem. We've got some issues going on inside of us, and we've all had experiences, and that changes the way that our brain works, changes the way we pair things, how we access information, and that affects how we make future decisions.
Yeah.
And for us here, we started drinking to compensate. We probably started drinking and smoking and eating too much food and maybe sleeping around. And I just go wherever you want to, right? It's not all the same.
Yeah. And I think what's super empowering, and I think was a paradigm shift for me when I learned about TSM and just the very basics of how alcohol addiction functions in the brain, and how TSM and even just mindfulness exercises, coupled with that, how that can really change it and heal the brain of the alcohol addiction. And just realizing, like you said earlier, it's not it's not who I am. Like that was one thing I struggled with AA, where it required me to call myself an alcoholic and like make that my identity. And I know that's helpful for some, but for me, I was like, that just gives me a reason to drink. If I'm an alcoholic, then I'm going to do what alcoholics do and I'm going to drink. But with TSM, it made me see like, oh, this is not a me issue. This is a brain issue because my brain has changed. And the good news is that neuroplasticity, our brains can change back. We can learn other behaviors. We can learn other coping tools. We can unlearn alcohol addiction. And I think that's such an empowering thing to realize, that it's not this like lifelong diagnosis that you've got to white knuckle and fight for the rest of your life. Though I know some people believe that. And again, that's helpful. But for me with TSM and extinction, I feel like I'm cured. Like I don't feel like I'm ever going to go back to that place. Like I tell people I've never, smoked cigarettes. So I don't worry that tomorrow I'm going to go out and become a smoker and become addicted to cigarettes. Like it's just not something that's going to happen. And that's how I feel with alcohol now, as well, as if it's just been reversed from my brain. Now, if I were to ever drink again, I would definitely take naltrexone beforehand, because I fear that I would go back to where I was, before the method. But I just have no interest in alcohol, that it adds nothing to my life. So I'm not even going to go there. Is that how you feel as well?
It is. It really, really is for the most part. What was I going to say? It really is. I mean, it hits it pretty spot on. I can't think what I was going to say.
Having to do with like alcohol being a brain issue and not an identity issue.
Well, I kind of had an idea and it slipped from me there for a minute though.
Okay.
Something specific about that, but that's okay.
Well, hopefully if it comes back up before we wrap up. But I know we're like a little bit over, so I guess we can start wrapping up. Like I said, I feel like I could talk to you for hours. You
We
have so much,
could.
you have so much wisdom to offer people, and through your experience, and you've spent a lot of time reflecting on it, and you just articulate it really well. And I can tell you've learned a lot and you have a lot to share. So I'm curious, like for people watching, what advice do you have for them if they're struggling or they're considering the method? Like, what do you have to say to people who are listening?
Ooh, well, one, I'm glad you're here watching, because that means you got stuff going on up here. And even though, you may not be moving each foot left, right, one in front of the other, and moving throughout this third dimension. Now, it sounds weird, but that's how you accomplish things in life. You take thoughts and put them into action. But this is still an action and you're thinking, so you're on a path, you're doing something. And that really is the key. Do something. All right. You have to do something. No matter what happens in life, if you don't like where you are right now, you change it. But how do you change stuff? By doing something. You have to take action. It's not about the success or the end result, or necessarily if you're always doing it right. I'm not saying go blind and I'm just going to do something. No, I mean, use your good sense, do research, get help. Okay. Reach out to people. It's very important, because when you try to do it on your own, we hear this all the time, it's better with others, but think of it from this way too. When you're doing it all by yourself, you're having an internal dialogue. You're not speaking out loud a lot of times. And that's powerful, because we know physiologically from science that speak something out loud and it will incorporate different areas of the brain. Okay. And if you're sitting there tweaking out and freaking out about alcohol here in the midbrain, you really want to get out of the midbrain. And that's very cold and unemotional, but you want it cold and unemotional, because the emotion is what's keeping you in there. You want to step out, but it's hard to step out. That's why you got to do something different. You've got to put a catalyst, something in there that will cause a chain reaction. And I believe that it's all the emotion, the guilt, the fear, the regret, whatever traumas we bring, whether they're big traumas or little traumas, however you want to look at it. Those things they all make a difference. And we developed alcohol, amongst other things, on how to cope with it. And if you want to be different, you have to be different. If you want to make a change, you have to change. That requires action. So just take a step. That's it. And if you will just take a step and then take another step, you now have 2 steps. If you take another step, right, that's how everything is done. And if anyone out there loves Rocky Balboa, the last one where he was fighting, what did he say to his son? How's winning done? It's true. It's done by one step after another, okay? You first got to think about it, then put it into action. I really try not to stress over the end result, whether you're going to get there or you're never going to get there. Focus on what you can do here right now and do it. Because the reason you're not doing it is likely because you're afraid. You don't know what's going to happen and you're scared. So you're avoiding it. And it's really not as scary most of the time as we think it is. And it's okay. And even if you survive for 1 minute or 5 minutes, you still survive. And you could survive for 6 minutes if you needed to, or a day, or maybe 2. You just got to, the way I look at it is very practical. And try to do your best to understand what's happening in your human body. And I do believe that your brain is not who you are. There's another part of you. And I don't know if you've heard David Goggins. He's really intense.
I have, yeah, he is.
But his messages are right on par with this. And it is, if you don't control your brain, it will control you. And then he's got another expletive at the end of that, just to drive the point home. But I do believe it's true. And we're all here in this same space. And this is how you navigate things. And it's really about taking action. Do anything, something. Because the sun rises and the sun sets. And that's a given. And it's going to happen no matter what. The real question is, what do you do between that time? And it's going to rise and it's going to set anyway. Did you do something? Did you have the courage to take a chance? Did you give up again? I give up all the time. I still do in life. It still happens. That's really the question. That's really the issue. It's not the drinking, man. It's not the cigarettes. It's not the food. It's, can you, if you want to get there, you're going to have to do the thing I just said. You're just going to have to take a step, or you're never going to get down the road, because we don't know how to teleport yet. Beam me up, Scotty. Hadn't figured it out yet. So right now you're going to have to walk down the road.
Yeah.
Or use a tool that goes faster to get you there quicker, more efficiently, like a vehicle, which is what NAL is. It's a tool. It's not cheating. You've got the knowledge to help yourself. Why would you not use the knowledge?
Yeah.
That's just the way I do it now. After viewing it the other way and hearing what everyone else has to say about it, and then just feeling crappy about that too. I'm just another disappointment. Now I'm a bigger disappointment because I'm going to think I'm going to take a pill and keep drinking to stop drinking and make it better. And everyone says I'm stupid. And I believe them. I'm an idiot. I'm stupid. That's a real thing to deal with too. Does it have anything to do with alcoholism? I don't think it does. It's an emotional thing with the way how I view myself and how I might care how others view me. And is that true or not? No, it wasn't true. It still isn't true. It's not really about alcohol. Naltrexone is going to help you be able to start getting your brain lined out so that you can start reading more, watching more things about science, watching more things about naltrexone, watching more things about dopamine, watching more things about trauma. Watch and learn them. You're going to learn so much, and it's going to make you so powerful that you're going to go, I don't want to drink. That's really the key. It's not going to be, I'm not going to drink today. You're going to go, I don't want to drink. There's no benefit. And you know what? Well, I won't say that, but you won't want to drink. Okay? You won't. And maybe you could go back and drink again, but I imagine you're probably, I think you said it a minute ago, is I would definitely take now if I drank, but I don't want to. Where's the benefit? Like, I look at it and go, and we make those decisions every day. You don't do anything you don't want to do most of the time that you don't want to do, because if it doesn't make sense to you, you're like, this is no good. It doesn't make sense. I'm not going to do this.
Yeah.
It's all the same.
Yeah. And that was something I never, when I started naltrexone, and even after a year on the treatment, I was like, the thought you were speaking earlier about, things we're afraid to do, the thought of never drinking again literally made my heart race. I was like, that is scary. Like, I don't even want to go there. But after being on the treatment for a year, reaching the extinction point, and then just going month after month without drinking, I was like, I literally don't want to drink, just like I don't eat raw oysters because I don't like them. Like, I'm not tempted. If you're eating a raw oyster, please eat as many as you want, but no, not for me. And that's how I feel about alcohol now.
Oh, that's powerful right there, because I am surrounded by alcohol constantly. Okay. Because of the people in my life that I love and care about. And that's part of it. But another part of it is that I decided for myself that even though I needed to quit drinking, it didn't mean others did. So, and I'm okay with that. I'm at peace with that part. I'm around it all the time, and I can be, and I'm okay with that. And I don't do things I don't want to do. And I'm getting more powerful at not doing things or being places where I don't want to be. But it's a part of my life. But it's not an issue because I don't want it. It doesn't matter where I am. It doesn't matter if I'm surrounded by alcohol or not. Yeah. It's everywhere anyway. And I want to live my life. I want to be productive. And I don't want to just get by. I want to be thriving, guys. And there's a difference. There's a difference between just existing and thriving. Yeah. And I want to thrive, and I want everyone to thrive.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like with alcohol, like I was just surviving and living for the next drink. And now it's a completely different way to live life when you can actually thrive and feel good. And yeah, that doesn't mean life is easy. Like sometimes it's almost harder, I think, being sober, because you're going after your dreams. You're not, oh, I'm just going to numb out tonight and get drunk and deal with that tomorrow. And believe me, there's challenges that come with both ways of living, but it's so much more fulfilling, and just it's wonderful to have that clarity. And I wanted to say too, you were talking about early, like you have to do something, like to make this change. In order to change, you have to do something. And I think for a lot of us, when we start on naltrexone, that's a huge step, like to honor the fact that when you take that pill before drinking, it really is changing a lot. And so that's a big step that a lot of people take. And I don't think they take it unless they're serious about making a change. But sometimes people take naltrexone and then that's all they do. Like I did that, I know, and I've heard it from others. Like they rely on that to do everything. And kind of like you were drinking through it for a while and not doing anything else. And that's okay. If someone's at that phase where they're just taking Nal and not doing anything else, that's a phase of the method. But recognize that, like I always say, you have to meet the medicine halfway. And like you talked about, getting support, talking to people, that's something like in the program we run, we have live group support calls. And just this week, people are like, if I don't attend this call, like I don't feel motivated, I don't feel as committed. You guys are helpful. So I think when we have alcohol, we can feel so isolated and ashamed. And, a lot of what Brené Brown talks about, we're very ashamed. So we kind of don't talk about it. We're not vulnerable. And so for people, if you're on TSM, to reach out, to talk about it, to get support. Don't let your thoughts just ruminate, because that's not going to be very helpful, because it's going to take you down a dark path, and you're not going to have someone else to shed perspective and reflect back to you what you're going through. So therapy, doctor, Facebook group, program, like we have at Thrive, the alcohol experiment, whatever it is, for you to plug into something and not isolate, because that's what the addiction wants you to do. It wants you to isolate. But healing happens when you can plug into support.
100%. And we say these things all the time, and I would hear it all the time because of the verbiage, and it's all right. But it would go, I'd be like, I wasn't catching the little details in there about you need to do something to be the catalyst to start change. And when you talk out loud, like you said, it doesn't do well in ruminating our mind, because you're still in this part of the brain where all your traumas and your fears and your fight and flight and freeze live. So no, you say it out loud, talk to others. It will bring you up to a different part of your brain. And that's why you do better. Like that's part of the reason why you do better. So there's like mechanics behind it, and then there's the emotional aspect of it. And for me, the more I learned about the mechanics of it through TSM to now, and then with the alcohol experiment, it helped me tremendously. It made all the difference. But I would say that I can't say it was the biggest thing. Maybe it's the biggest catalyst to rocketing, or starting that rocket to really reducing that trend, is taking that step of don't drink, don't take it now, go do something that creates endorphins in your body. That's very important. Yeah, that's really, really important. because you can take the now and do TSM and keep drinking through it and just keep drinking forever. You really can do that.
It's true.
You are changing, but you could just still keep drinking a year, 2 years, 3 years. Like, you could conceivably just continue to do that. You're going to have to, that's only part of this process. That's what I've been meaning to say. That's only part of this process. There's a backside, I guess, or there's another step that maybe it seems kind of hidden, or it's not, it doesn't, it's right there in front of your face, but it's like you don't see it or something.
Yeah.
And that is, you take the now, you follow the rules, but you are also going to have to not drink, not take the now, give your body endorphins. That is part of the protocol. It's part of the treatment. That's where the success will also can start to happen. If you don't do that, what's left? Drinking through the gnaw. That's all that is left. That's all that remains. So I'd like to help people focus on, I'm not doing it, and I can't. No, think about this. Because of the things you're doing, this is occurring. Stop focusing on all the bad and guilt, and look at what the result is, and you're not getting. It's a shift. It's like a coin, heads, tails, heads. It's the same stinking coin.
Yeah.
Just shift your perspective on it. And it's true. It's true. It's not a lie. It's the truth. It's right in front of your face. You just need to help getting to see it. But if you don't follow that step of TSM, I don't know how long it would take for you to get that. I don't know if you ever would, really. And that's the thing. It was so big. And people that, as I would follow stories and stuff like that, well, people who are having success were doing that.
Yeah.
They were doing that. And I was still in that category of not doing that part yet. And I was still drinking through the gnaw. There's a whole bunch of people out there doing that. And whenever you can figure out how to get past that emotional barrier, the fear, whatever, and what I'm saying about speaking out loud, talking to others, get yourself out of your midbrain and getting into different parts of your brain, that's going to help you do that. It's a strategy. And we're all smart. And if you could get a little bit of a leg up, a fix on the game, you'd probably take it.
No, I'm really glad you're talking about that, because it's a very practical thing. And to your point, it's something that I think a lot of people know on TSM. Like, eventually I've got to get some alcohol-free days and experience life outside of this world of just drinking, regularly. And it can be really scary. It can be unknown. It can be awkward. I remember my first alcohol-free Saturday, or one of them. I was like out at a thrift store and consignment store, is something I like to do, but it was like almost awkward at 2:00 on a Saturday to be sober. I was like, this is bizarre. And that sounds silly, but it's taking those steps that make you feel awkward, that make you feel in fear, that are uncomfortable, that are truly crucial to the success with TSM. Like, yes, you want to drink on naltrexone and have those extinction sessions, but if that's all you're doing and you're not giving your brain a chance, like you're saying, to experience other pleasures, other rewards, other hobbies, and what you spoke about earlier, like, there's this void you have to fill. Like, I was a daily drinker for 10 years. I spent 5-7 hours a day drinking every day. What am I going to do with those 5 or 7 hours when I'm not drinking anymore? How am I going to cope with really stressful days when I always would have a couple bottles of wine, or spend my Saturday and Sunday drinking starting at 11 a.m. Like, that's so many hours in a week that I had to learn to fill up with time, and also so many triggers and responses in life that I had to learn to respond to differently other than alcohol. Even something like boredom. I was drinking because I'm bored. Okay, well, what other hobbies can I explore? Because drinking is my only hobby. So I think that I'm very glad that you're speaking to that, and we're kind of wrapping up on that point, because it's something that's crucial to success on the method. And some people do it takes them a while to get there, and honoring the fact that alcohol-free days can be really scary, especially if before TSM you've done them. Oftentimes they're uncomfortable, they're white-knuckled, they're very difficult and painful. But with TSM, it's different. And what I always hear from people is like, it's actually easier than I thought it was going to be. And even we have a gal in our program, she had surgery recently and was on opiate pain medication. So she couldn't take naltrexone for like almost a 2-week period. And she's had like alcohol-free days, like 3 or 4, but she hadn't had 2 weeks. And so she was really scared, but she got through it. And she's like, I didn't even really want to drink. And that was surprising to her, because she'd only ever had 3 days before, but she made it 2 weeks and was like, yeah, I didn't even really care about it. And it's like,
and she probably had that power within her for a period of time. She just didn't know, because she hadn't done it. Just like for you, like Saturday at 2:00 or whatever day it was, that's not weird. You just didn't remember ever experiencing a 2:00 sober Saturday.
Yeah.
Like, there's people everywhere going, this is pretty normal stuff to me. I'm kind of bored. And you're like, wow, I'm so blown away by this. Like, it's just 2:00 on Saturday.
Yeah.
But you hadn't seen the sunlight at 2 o'clock on a Saturday like that in 10 years.
Yeah.
So you just didn't remember, or no.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
Yeah. And once you get that lived experience, it builds this confidence in you, and like, oh wow, I can be someone who doesn't drink on a Saturday. Like, that's a new way to live life. Okay, well, what does that look like now? And something I always encourage people is, at least for me, alcohol was just this massive reward in my life, also a relief, but a reward. And so to be really overindulgent with the things you reward yourself with on alcohol-free days, like I would reward myself with massages or really good food or buying a little treat or something, just so you have something special to look forward to, and you don't feel like you're taking alcohol away and not replacing it with something else. I know you keep using the example of a walk, but even something extra indulgent that feels special. That's just one tip I think can be helpful.
Well, I actually think that is very, very important what you just said. I think that is actually really crucial for people to kind of pinpoint on, because I didn't do enough of that for myself. And I keep saying go take a walk, because that was probably about the extent of what I did for myself. And that's really important. You should take better care of yourself. You should treat yourself better. I did not treat myself very well. You just pointed that out to me to realize I didn't treat myself as well as I should have. You should treat yourself well. Go treat yourself for something. If you usually spend $65 on that handle of bourbon, well, go spend $65 on a massage then. Be brave, be courageous, take a risk, and go spend that money on something else. Because guess what? Now it's spent. You can go back and respend it. It's done now. So, if you're going to drink, you'll end up drinking anyway, but you might not. And you won't know unless you try.
Yeah. Wow, Michael, this has been such a good conversation. I'm so grateful you came on to chat with me. It's just, we covered so many topics, and I have to jump because I have another meeting, unfortunately. Otherwise, I would stay here all day with you. But I just want to thank you so much. This interview has been so rich. You've offered so much to people, and I hope people got something out of it. Final thoughts before we wrap up. Anything else you want to leave us with?
Everyone's great. Good. You out there, wherever you are, I want you to know that you are special, okay? And you are important and significant. And yes, you probably feel very down, depressed, guilty. Those are all normal. We all feel those. It's okay, but you don't have to be there. And maybe the most courageous thing that is necessary you're going to do is just to do something different from what you have done. Just different. Okay. If you're usually walking in one direction, maybe you don't make a 180, maybe you make a 90 or 45-degree turn. And just go. And that's going to be scary. I'm not saying it's going to be hard, but it's going to be so terrifying for so many reasons, but it's okay. Treat yourself well, ask for help, get people around, and be vulnerable about it. So that's how you're going to get there. You're not going to get there if you do it. I won't say you won't get there if you do it by yourself. We've been talking about what happens when you do things by yourself. You stay inside your shell, and it's not very likely you come out of it, because you're not taking actions to come out of it. That's necessary. So get help. People you love you. They don't have to understand you. And be brave and do something that scares you. Okay? And just go do it. You're going to be okay. I promise you are. You're going to be better when you're done.
You're such an inspiration. I just want to thank you so much for sharing your story and so much of your personal history and things with us. It really means a lot. So great chatting with you, and we'll talk to you later. Bye, Michael.
Thank you.